What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, Coach Steve. With me is, as always, is my man, Jabron Curtis. What's going on, Coach Jibs?
What up, team? What up, fam? I'm just glad to do another podcast on a nice gloomy Monday after getting rained on all weekend. But other than that, hey, I'm alive, I'm breathing, and hey, let's get it moving.
Hell yeah. And of course, we got Coach John. What's going on, Coach John?
Nothing much, coaches. Just hanging out. Another beautiful Monday.
Absolutely. It's good to be a Monday here, and we have football to talk about, guys, of course. In today's episode, guys, we are talking year two players. So we're going to go back, not recap, but reevaluate some of these players and how they're going to do this how we assume that they're going to be doing this coming season, whether they're going to take that next step or have a big breakout year or fail and regress or just not live up to the hype that they had after their rookie season or before their rookie season. So we'll get right into it, of course. Get my handy dandy slideshow up today. And of course, I said year two fantasy players, guys. So news-wise, there's not a lot of things going on out there. Jared McKennon signed a one-year deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. Terry McLaurin expected to continue his holdout. David Johnson visiting the Saints. Really weird. I thought he'd be done. Robbie Anderson almost wanting to retire during the weekend and then posts on Instagram Monday that he's ready to go for minicamp. So Robbie Anderson playing with some fantasy dynasty owners right now. And, of course, Terrence Marshall truthers that are still out there. So, again, really nothing in terms of fantasy news really too much here. I wouldn't go into too much detail. So I really want us to get into the juice of our actual segment today. So we will start here at the top here. Year two quarterbacks who plan to succeed or who we assume is going to exceed. Coach John, you have first up, my friend. You got Trevor Lawrence. Why is Trevor Lawrence primed to succeed in his year two season?
Because I think one of the biggest things and one of the biggest factors that was holding Trevor Lawrence back was the organization and the coach. So the fact that he's got Doug Peterson in there now, new coach, go in there and teach him how to, be a good professional, run an offense, simplify the game for him so that it can just get down to the fundamentals. He has all the tools. He has all the intangibles. He has the arm talent. He has the mobility. So for me, I think this is just a Jaguars thing. I think it was, a little bit of, oh my God, why can't I think of his name? Old coach that just got fired.
Urban Meyer.
I think it's a little bit of Urban Meyer's doing for why Trevor Lawrence in that season went so south so quickly. But I still believe in the talent, and I still believe that Trevor Lawrence is a top, quarterback, top 15, top 10 quarterback in the league. And I think he can break out into that level next year.
Yeah, I pretty much agree.
Surrounded him with talent. I mean, they gave him weapons, and now I'm not saying that they're the best weapons, but they at least gave him some weapons to work with and gave him some pieces. In Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, and it's going to be Travis Etienne coming back off of injury. So I think there is promise to be had in that offense, and if they can creep towards being a 20, if they're 20th in the league in offensive rankings, and then Trevor Lawrence's fantasy value will go way up. There's no way he's only going to throw a handful of touchdowns again next year. It's just not possible. Statistically, it's just crazy that he threw for almost 500 attempts and only had a half dozen touchdowns. Like, that's just crazy that even happened. So it'll bounce back. Regression is due to come for Trevor Lawrence.
Absolutely. And I know we've been talking a lot about Trevor Lawrence. So
I feel like I've been talking up Trevor like 2 shows in a row now.
I think it was last show too. But again, it's the importance by Coach John, how Trevor Lawrence is primed to bounce back after a really bad season. Shout out to last week's episode. But Coach Jibbs, over to you, my friend. You got none, as which you told me at some point, but you said maybe Davis Mills. Run us through why, none, and maybe at that point, why Davis Mills maybe.
All right, I told you none this morning. That was before I had my cup of coffee and I got acclimated at work, so I was feeling a little grumpy, But I did come up with Davis Mills. Out of the, I guess, last remaining quarterbacks, I think you guys took two pretty good ones. But in my opinion, the Texans' offseason shows them that they believe in David Mills. They finally dealt Watson to the Browns. They didn't bother bringing in any quarterback competition whatsoever. They didn't draft no one. They got Jeff Driscoll and like other bums back there too. So like you know the gig's him. Last season he finished QB 28, so there's only room for up, like unless you're like a Jets quarterback from last 2 seasons. But he paired 13 games, and like just like your guy Steve, like he started out in the beginning of the season, had his rookie lumps, and
Sure did.
he came back, and then he had a couple good games down the stretch. And I think in the last 5 games he had 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So like they still have Brandon Cooks as like I guess the lead guy in the offense for him to anchor on. He could get some more chemistry with Nico Collins and Bevan Jordan, and I think those three could like be a steady like dose offensively for him to pass through. And then obviously I know they have a room full of running backs, and they're gonna need them. They're not good whatsoever, but like with how many heads they have, I think they'll find a solution for running the ball this year. So instead of being that quarterback 3 this season, I think Davis Mills could kind of creep up into that I guess low end QB2 range. And like especially if you're doing redraft, I mean super flex leagues and stuff like that, that'd be a quarterback in the late round you want to keep your eye on. Like he's still young, and you could probably get a couple of years and some service out of him instead of paying high end capital and drafts to get your 2 bookend quarterbacks for your flex and your super flex. So I'm going with Davis Mills. I think he's ready to take a leap, and yeah, I'm not saying Mac Jones because like I still think the freaking tricycle wheels are still on the bike with him.
Well, we might mention Mac Jones in a little bit, but over to mine there because I love yours, Jibs, because I do like Davis Mills. I hope the man can succeed in his year too, but we'll see. But like I said, over to mine, guys. I obviously went with Zach Wilson, of course, my fantasy dream crush over here, apparently, because I talk about Zach Wilson consistently in fantasy football. And I don't know what else is there left to say, but I mean, the man has just been giving the best weapons possible compared to anyone else in this draft class. He's got 3 really talented wide receivers, a solid tight end duo, a run game that features high caliber talent. He was somebody like his game involves around the deep ball, and there's players for him to use in that fashion. He has that ability to run. The run game is going to improve, which is a key factor in this, somewhat Kyle Shanahan type of offense that they're trying to attempt to run in New York. And again, he was someone who did very well, again, on the deep ball, top 15 quarterback in terms of deep ball completions and red zone. And then you have that rushing ability that he could possibly show us. Again, at the end of the season, he look more comfortable in the offense here. I know people are saying is inaccurate in the offseason right now and OTAs and shit, but again, that's just some bullshit talk for right now. Honestly, you get this man on the field, and Zach Wilson is going to take that next step in his development for one of these year 2 guys, and I'm really excited to see what he's able to do because many of my dynasty teams rely on Zach Wilson to perform to that level. But in a general sense, even if I didn't need Zach Wilson to do that, I do believe that he can.
Yeah, I think Zach Wilson's a great one. Zach Wilson's a good one. I mean, the Jets basically surrounded him with every excuse to not be successful. So now he needs to step up. He's got all these pieces, like you said, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, the running back game is going to be good. I think watching him come out of play action, which is where Kyle Shanahan does a lot of their damage, is play action. Zach Wilson can have some big plays, which will be good, for both Zach Wilson and the receiving core around him. The Jets in general are they're a good experiment. I'm excited to see the Jets play. I say this, I feel like I say this every year, but I'm excited to see the Jets offense this year.
I haven't said that in 15, 20 years.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, I don't think I've ever been excited for it, but I do like it this year. So that's why I'm on the Zach Wilson bandwagon still. So, but we got to talk about some quarterbacks that are doomed to fail here right now. And it's basically the other 3 quarterbacks that we have yet to talk about in this class here. And Coach John, you have your boy, Mac Jones, as a fail. But maybe it's a different type of fail that we're thinking of. So explain us, why is Mac Jones a failed quarterback in year 2 for you?
So this one really was just an interpretation of what the word fail means. And so, this whole conversation was who takes a step forward and who doesn't, right? And I just don't think Mac Jones can take a step forward. I just don't think he has the tools. He doesn't have the mobility. He doesn't have the arm strength. What we saw out of Mac Jones last year, get in the playoffs, you get bounced by a good Bills team, but you were farting around low-end quarterback 2 numbers. You had a couple spike weeks where you're in the low quarterback 1. I think that's probably who Mac Jones is and what we get from him. I mean, that's fine and serviceable if you're in a dynasty format and you need to plug up. You know, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. I think the Patriots love him. I think he's a good quarterback in real NFL standards. But for fantasy, I just think there's nowhere really for him to grow. I think what you get is he's going to deliver the ball. He's going to, dissect a defense quickly. He's going to make the correct throws, but none of this stuff is like this high octane, super powerful, potent fantasy stuff. So I think that in the loss of their coach, of the offensive coordinator is going to be tough. It's going to be really hard for them to come through and who's calling plays now. It's one thing to go from one of the smartest offensive minds to now Matt Patricia. I mean, I don't know who's calling plays for them. It's going to be interesting. So I think Mac Jones is not a fail in terms of like he's just going to flame out of the league, but in terms of fantasy, he's just a limited piece. He's very limited. He's going to be a solid quarterback 2 for you.
All right. Like I said, Mac Jones is definitely an interesting because he obviously, out of everyone, he played the best, considerably so. But taking that next step, that I don't think they put the weapons around him to even attempt to do that. And you're going to get, I think, like Coach John said, similar numbers to what we saw last year. So I like that one there. I hate you to probably say it about your Patriots, but
it hurt. It hurt to say it, but I had to be honest. I got to be honest with the listeners. I just don't see a world where Mac Jones takes this like fantasy step forward. I just don't, unless he all of a sudden puts up 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns, which is not going to happen. But he's not going to do anything with his legs. He's not going to run any touchdowns in. So, you got to hope for that big, massive, kind of, I don't know, like a big statistical passing year that I just don't think Mac Jones has in the bag.
Right, definitely. All right, Coach Jibbs, my friend, over to you. Justin Fields, my man. Why Justin Fields for you?
Well, we mentioned how Mac Jones has some talent around him. Zach Wilson just got all the talent around him. But Justin Fields, the Bears, man, they're not doing anything whatsoever to help this man. Like, Justin Fields has all the allure, the talent. He could rush. He could throw the ball. Like, we've seen some deep connection with Darnell Mooney and whatnot. But, like, my big thing with Justin Fields this year is that offensive line. They let Allen Robinson walk in free agency. That's a big piece of their offense gone, a big body receiver that could help them out. I think Darnell Mooney is in the line for a great year as well. But like Byron Pringle, Velus Jones, really, like that's not doing you good. That's a lot of speed though, but it's really not helping you. I looked at an article from Pro Football Focus at the beginning of this offseason, so at the end of last year, and they rated the Bears offensive line 22nd worst. You know what their ranking is? Same article that came out this morning.
I'm going to say
31st worse.
Oh, 31st.
So
yeah.
They got even worse in the offseason. So if Justin Fields doesn't have any time in the pocket to connect with those deep throws and get those speedy wide receivers open, I don't think he's going to have that much stability in the offense. Yeah, he could run, but like with offensive line woes, we could see him being nicked up and missing games like he did last year. So I'm kind of skeptical of Justin Fields this year. I hope he has a good year, just like you, Steve. I do have dynasty shares of Justin Fields, but like it's a lot of things gotta have to work in this direction, and especially in a pretty I wouldn't say lukewarm, but their NFC North teams are pretty competitive towards each other. So
this is true, and it's a tough division. But yeah, like you said, Fields is definitely someone. He needs more time in the pocket, more time to develop, and he's not getting that this season. So him taking a big step like a Lamar Jackson or something like that just doesn't seem logical in his second season.
No, you need pieces to have these hyper mobile and these types of quarterbacks work. The Justin Fields, the Trey Lances. You need to have an offensive system around him to support that. And the Bears just don't have it. The Bears just don't have the tools and the pieces around to make Justin Fields successful. So I agree with this one 100%. And I love Justin Fields, the talent in a vacuum. He's one of my favorites. He's a competitive guy. He's great. But I just don't think the Bears have what it takes for him to take that next step.
All right, another good one there, Coach Gibbs. And over to mine, guys. Definitely a lot of people going to hate on this one, of course, because it's Trey Lance, guys. And I picked mine first over everyone, so I could have went many different directions here. I set my picks in before these guys had a chance to pick theirs. But the way I see with Trey Lance is I don't expect him to take that step that everyone. I mean, there's people out there in redrafts that has him as a top 10 redraft quarterback this season, that he is going to just dominate this league, have a Lamar Jackson type of year, or Kyler Murray rookie year, where he's just fantastic. And I know it comes down to the rushing ability of him, of course, which is fantastic. But for me, his passing game is kind of scary still. I mean, over last year, over any passer who had 70 and more passes, he had the lowest completion percentage over every other quarterback in the NFL. Not great. He's got a lot of great weapons around him, which is great to hear. But his deep ball accuracy is kind of scary. He's something he needs to improve on that. He's got the arm talent. There's no question about that. It's just that there is literally no accuracy. He just throws it to throw it, like a fastball in like baseball or something like that, and it goes any which way possible. He's also a quarterback who really hasn't played a lot of football over the last 2 seasons. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he's played, I think, maybe 10 full games over the last two years now in his football career, and that goes back to college. You know, there's no stepstone when you go from a Division II to the NFL. You didn't get that time to just develop and take those woos when he could. He's not going to get a chance to this year because they're really trying to have him win. They're putting a lot of faith in this man. And to be honest, the 49ers, their past attempts over the last 3 years, 2 of them has been in bottom 5. So he's not going to be throwing the ball as much. And if he's not going to win with his legs, he has to win with his legs. That's what everyone's hoping. He wins with his legs. And that's a lot to put on your fantasy quarterback for one season, who we haven't really seen do it yet. I mean, we saw Lamar Jackson do it his rookie year, and we were excited to see what he was able to do this following year, and he produced. Trey Lance really hasn't shown us enough of his rushing ability to have enough faith that he's going to make this massive jump where he's going to be a top 5, top 8 fantasy quarterback. I think he does something, obviously, and he might help you win weeks here and there, but I just don't think he lives up to that hype right away in his career.
Yeah, I think cooling the hype on Trey Lance is probably smart. I think that's probably a good play because you're right. The hype around Trey Lance is getting too much. And I like Trey Lance, and I don't agree with you that he's going to fail, but I do agree that we do need to kind of chill a little bit on like how high we're taking Trey Lance and where we think he's going to go and all these different things. I do think he can succeed because I believe in Kyle Shanahan, and I believe that Kyle Shanahan knows how to put the best good players in good situations, and then they will perform. So I think he knows Trey Lance's downfalls. He knows he's not accurate with the deep ball, but he's going to throw screens to Deebo Samuel. He's going to throw small, slants to Deebo and Kittle up the middle and little stuff like that. And so I think he has guys that can yak for him, so he could get some yardage through the air, but it won't look like he's, it's not Justin Herbert where he's throwing some 70-yard bomb. But you're right. I think the hype is getting a little crazy. For Trey Lance in the dynasty world, and even in redraft. I was on a podcast recently and said, Jimmy is still there, and I, not that I don't think Trey Lance is going to start. I do think Trey Lance is going to start, but I don't know. People are talking about him and drafting him as if Jimmy is gone already and doesn't exist, and I don't know. There could just be more question marks to Trey Lance than we're willing to admit in fantasy.
I agree 100% with that. We were drafting him top 3 last year in rookie drafts, and Jimmy G still had the job. Almost got him to the goddamn Super Bowl. So, It's pretty significant. I don't know if I'll draft him top 10 in redraft. I'm not there yet. Maybe as the OTAs and the mandatory mini camps go along and you see more videos and footage, then I'll may be a believer. But yeah, I don't know. That's a steep price where I could kind of fix some lineups at, depending on how they go in drafts.
You're paying, this is the thing, and I always try and talk about dynasty like it's a stock market, and you're paying absolute peak price for Trey Lance right now. You're paying the max. Right. So it's just hard to invest in these pieces for your dynasty team if you're paying max. If he hits and does well and he's quarterback 8 on the year, great. Okay. But it won't feel like you really accomplished much because you paid quarterback 8 price. So it's like, oh, all right, I just got what I paid for.
That's a great way to explain it, guys. Great way. All right, so let's head over to the RBs now. RBs who we expect to succeed in year 2. Coach John, you got Travis Etienne, buddy. Didn't play last year.
I
Has
know.
to go up from here. It can't be
It
any
has
worse
to
than
go
that.
up. It has to go up. So I kind of cheated. So Travis Etienne has to go up, obviously. But I took this as I think he will really succeed. I think he'll really have a breakout year. Coming off the injury is always scary, and it's always tough to bet on someone coming off an injury. I usually like to wait until year 2 after the injury, but I just don't think that's going to happen with Etienne. I think Etienne's going to walk into a pretty decent role right off the bat. James Robinson is there, and James Robinson will certainly still have work when he gets healthy again too, but they can work in tandem. And Travis Etienne, what he will do is bring something to the receiving game that Jacksonville is lacking. So he is very electric in space, very electric in open areas, the screen game, things like that. I think Travis Etienne is going to do, it's hard, but I could see a role where he carves out like an Alvin Kamara, 140 carries, 80 targets, 90 targets, and that's kind of his jam. So I think he's good enough to make 220, 230 touches work for him. And so that's why I think Travis Etienne is going to break out. I don't know if you're going to be able to get him at a lower price than right now, because what's going to happen is he's going to come back. He's going to show that he has this, works well and is healthy. And then the hype is just going to go even higher. And so in my opinion, I think he's probably a high-end running back 2 with some spike weeks, if this offense can figure it out. But that's where I'm valuing him right now.
All right. Again, you cheated there. I like it though, but it makes sense. He's going to make that. He's got to make that jump. It just seems too natural for him to not be someone who can succeed in his career now. So I like it. I do like it. Coach Gibbs, over to you, my friend. You have Javonte Williams here. Melvin Gordon's back now. You got Russ, but you still believe there's more to him to come this year.
Hey, man, if you would have put Melvin Gordon and Javonte numbers together, they probably would have been tuck and tuck with Derrick Henry of like 2 years ago. So I know Melvin Gordon came back, and I just had belief that the Broncos and Javonte Williams himself did enough last year to prove that he could be the 1A, not the 1B in the running back room. And I think he's set up to succeed based off your questions because they brought Melvin Gordon back. They're not going to run this guy into the ground. They're not going to give him 350 carries and then have him be treading water the next couple of years. So I think that's a portion of him that he can succeed in NFL long term. But say for instance, even if Javonte Williams, I think they pretty much carry the ball 50-50. If you got a 5% increase, 55, 45, that's more chances of him getting those bludgeoning runs that we all love, where he's breaking off 3 tackles, getting 60, 50 yards. And obviously you mentioned Russell Wilson becoming the quarterback there. I don't think they're gonna have that many turnover problems in the red zone, so their touchdown efficiency could increase theoretically. I think that everyone's touchdown efficiency could increase on the offense, so that's why I'm kind of in on Javonte Williams. Worst case comes worse, you're paying, I think I looked on Fantasy Pros, they have him, it's the hot for him is crazy. They have him ranked 22, so I don't know if I'll be in the Javonte Williams camp during redraft season, but I could think that price round 2, 3-ish player could be justified right there. So I like Javonte Williams. I think the offense is going to be nice this year. So.
All right. I like that, honestly. I think Javonte Williams does have upside still. Again, there are some people who believe that still, and there's some people who are doubting it now, and I feel like he's falling down drafts because of that. Everyone's like, oh, Melvin Gordon's back. But Javonte Williams is that talented of an individual that if the touchdowns went his way last year, he would have been much higher up on that list compared to Melvin Gordon was because of that. So I think if the touchdowns fall his way this year and he gets some more of those carries, he will succeed.
He's probably the most talented back on this list. So, it's always nice to bet on talent at running back position where you're like, eventually the talent outweighs touches where coaches know okay, I got to give this guy more because he's just a more talented back. So I like the Javonte Williams call. I'm a big fan.
Definitely. And over to mine, guys. I went with Elijah Mitchell. We all know Elijah Mitchell, who was that sixth round pick who came out of nowhere at the start of the season and just had a fantastic year. And now, people are doubting him. They were like, well, he got injured a lot last year. They have, Trey Sherman is still there. They drafted Trayvon Davis-Price, in the third round. It's just like, it doesn't seem they don't want to trust him or whatever it may be. 49ers running back, hard to trust in general. I get a lot of those concerns there for sure. But Elijah Mitchell was dominant last year. And yeah, he missed games due to injuries, a lot of different injuries, which sucks. But you have to have faith in the talent that he showed us last year. I mean, 8 games over 80 rushing yards. He was 8th in rushing despite missing 6 games here and there. I mean, that's pretty good for a running back right there, and an offense that loves to run the football here. And I don't think Davis-Price is going to come in and steal the show for sure. I mean, he was overdrafted completely. But the backups there, Jeff Wilson, Trey Sherman, JaMychal Hasty, none of these guys really scream out like competitive, I got to have them on my team, or they need to beat out Elijah Mitchell. So if anything, Davis-Price will be more of a compliment role. And I really do believe if Mitchell can stay healthy, there's literally no doubt this man can have a 1,000-yard season. Again, it comes down to health, a lot of it, of course. But he's in an offense that loves to run the ball. You have Trey Lance, who should open up the running lanes, obviously because of a rushing quarterback is on the field. Definitely helps the running game out there. And I expect him to be able to do what he's able to do, what he showed us last year, and make a big impact and do even better than what we saw this past season out of him.
Yeah, I have no concerns. People who want to say, the draft capital with Elijah Mitchell, he's going to lose this job, or Kyle Shanahan doesn't run with one back, or anyone who wants to use that narrative, that's fine. You can take it, but I don't play with that fear. I know what Elijah Mitchell did. They know the talent that's there, and they're like, look, we got talent. So yeah, they drafted another running back in the third because teams need 1 million running backs. Teams need 5 running backs. And so that to me spoke more to like Jeff Wilson. It spoke more to Trey Sermon, all these other pieces. But they know Elijah Mitchell is the top of their depth chart, and then they're just filling out after that. So if people want to be concerned, and that's why the dip is happening and why people are selling off on Elijah Mitchell, I'm buying. I'm totally buying.
I'm buying too. Damn shit. I'll be first in line too, express lane. I got my bag ready to go.
Oh, wow. Well, it looks like our friends won their Rocket League tournament, and they're blowing up my phone right now. But we're not talking about Rocket League, guys. We're talking about fantasy football. I'll have to come at them later. But going over to, like I said, Elijah Mitchell threw me off there. Guys threw me off there. But, Elijah Mitchell hopefully should be able to succeed going into next season. But let's go over some guys who are planning on maybe failing here that we aren't as high on. Coach John, you have Joshua Kelly. Joshua Kelly definitely had a big opportunity in his rookie season to make noise, but obviously didn't go out that way. And you're expecting that to continue into his second season.
Yeah, 100%. Joshua Kelly, he had a couple games early on in the season when he had, I think it was like 8 touches and then 10 touches week 1, week 2, and he had a couple big runs, and people were talking about Joshua Kelly and all this stuff with Austin Eckler, and then he just fell down the depth chart and tumbled. And then when there came a chance when there was injuries afoot, Joshua Kelly was nowhere to be seen. He was a healthy scratch a couple of times. It was just like, forget it. So I know there wasn't a ton of hype around Joshua Kelly coming into this season, but to me, I think he is almost a borderline roster clogger at this point if you have him in Dynasty, which is crazy to think that a year in. But I would be cutting bait with Joshua Kelly as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm pretty on board with you. I mean, they drafted Isaiah Spiller. I mean, his profile coming in is 10 times better than what Joshua Kelly was giving us when he first came into the league. I'd expect Joshua Kelly to. I don't even know if he's going to even make the roster, to be honest.
He might borderline get cut. He might get cut after a year, which is crazy. But the NFL is a tough position, man, and running backs in general are just a meat grinder where they chew you up and spit you out.
This is true. All right, Coach Jibbs, my friend, over to you. You okay?
Yeah, I'm dropping Josh Kelly off one of my dynasty teams.
Smart.
Well, while you're doing that, I will introduce your character here. You have Michael Cotter from the New York Jets. Obviously, you don't expect him to take a leap in after a pretty solid rookie year. Tell us why.
No, not at all. Like you guys already mentioned with Zach Wilson, the Jets did a fantastic job bolstering up their offense this off season. And unfortunately, one of the positions they strengthened up was running back, and they got the creme de la creme of the draft, Bryce Hall. So for me, like you probably heard this like on some of our redraft episodes, Michael Carter just makes me nauseous because in 2021, I felt like he needed volume just to sustain good fantasy finishes week to week. It felt like when you look at it, when Michael Carter had 18 plus touches, he had a minimum of 14 points. Any other game where you got less than 18 touches, it was probably like 10, 8, 7, 9. And basically last season he had a high 29 touches in one game. He had 32 fantasy points, and the second highest was 22 touches. He had 18 fantasy points. Basically, what I'm telling you, I think Breece Hall is going to come in and cut in some of that work, especially in the receiving work where he made some dividends, and especially in PPR league. So I kind of think he's just going to be relegated to a 2-down back that's going to be touchdown dependent. And like we all said, like this is going to be the first time the Jets offense is going to be good in some time, but I'm still not sold on them being good. They're still going to have to work through their kinks and whatnot. So like Michael Carter scares the crap out of me, and I think he's not going to be in line to have a good season like he did last year at points.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Michael Carter is going to have to be very efficient and take advantage of any opportunity he gets this year. I don't think he's going to see the goal line work as much. If anything, he's going to probably be the passing down back to some extent. And if he's not getting the necessary targets that he needs, he might just be a guy who is more like a DFS play or like obviously a best ball play where he gets a couple of good games here and there, but he won't be a consistent. I don't think he's going to be a consistent factor.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, you said like, oh, he needs to be efficient with his touches. Michael Carter's not efficient. That's, we've talked about it. It's just not who he is. It's a 30, he had 32 points on 28 touches. Like that's, you give that to most other running backs and they're having a 40, 50 point game. So, I think it's in Michael Carter is a tough one because I did like Michael Carter in UNC. I liked him a lot. But I think it's just he's another one that's going to start to kind of fade into a secondary committee role with, and be some specialist running back, which is not good for fantasy, which is not good.
It is not.
You're the king of the committee for 1 year, then you get a partner every time.
Every time.
Well, over to mine. I know this might hurt Jibs a little bit there as an Eagles fan. I'm glad to hear, but there are so many Kenny Gainwell truthers out there right now. I feel like still people love Kenneth Gainwell, and I'm trying to cool it down for whatever it may be. I don't think Kenny Gainwell takes a big leap, but we're talking about him as a top 20 player, during the season all the time or something like that. Because the way I see it, Kenny Gainwell, I think, got most of the opportunity early on in the season. His situation kind of dwindled as, a guy like Miles Sanders came back and was healthier later in the season after he got hurt early on. But everyone's hoping like Miles Sanders gets hurt and then Kenny Gainwell can take over and just dominate. But I think Miles Sanders, again, we don't know. Hopefully he stays healthier this coming year. That's a big key factor. Miles Sanders being healthy. And I think Miles Sanders healthy is really, really good at football. He is really good at football. It's just that he hasn't been on the field. Kenny Gainwell took opportunity early on in the season. I got those touchdowns, got 50 targets last year. I just don't really see him seeing more than 50 targets, if that. Especially if Miles Sanders can play all 16, 17 games this coming season. This team, I don't know what direction they're really going on the offense. You have to assume it's once they want to pass the ball more. But, Jalen Hurts only threw like 425 attempts last year. I don't know how many more attempts he's really going to throw. Is he going to get the 500 maybe? But then you have to worry about all the weapons now. You have to throw to A.J. Brown. You have to throw to Javonte Smith. You still have Dallas Goedert there. You have other wide receivers. Miles Sanders is going to see targets. So I just don't really see Kenny Gainwell really taking any sort of major leap where he's like the Tony Pollard of the Cowboys or the Eagles offense, or he's just playing and contributing week in week and you can just start him without a doubt. I think if anything, 2023, you could see more of his role expand if that's the case. But I think in 2022, it's not going to take that next leap that some folks wanted to.
Don't disrespect Tony Pollard like that. Don't you dare.
Tony Pollard playing wide receiver now, apparently.
Oh,
So,
wow.
based on the news we've seen out there,
But
It's
I
it's
agree
that
with
time of year.
100%.
all these running backs are playing in the slot now. I don't know.
Oh yeah. It's that time of year. Everyone's in the best shape of their life, and everyone's lining up all over the field in OTAs. It's the best. It's all everything is in a rose-colored glass right now.
It really is.
All right, boys. So over to our wide receivers now. Those who will succeed for us. Coach John, you have one of my boys, Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
Why is Elijah Moore going to succeed? Garrett Wilson's there now, man.
I know Garrett Wilson's there, and I think that's part of why Elijah Moore will succeed. I think Elijah Moore needs someone on to pull attention away and needs someone to take the top off of a defense so that he can run these slants, run these underneaths, get into space and make guys miss one-on-one. That's where Elijah Moore is successful. So the fact that they brought more weapons in just means he can relegate to that 1B in an offense, or even a high-end 2 in this offense. And so to me, Elijah Moore is going to fit more and profile more as a NFL team's number 2. And so when you put them in the right place and you put them in the right space, and Garrett Wilson, hopefully it's going to take a little bit. I think it probably won't be until week 4, 5, 6 that you really start to see this offense gel. But at that point, then you're going to get a consistent floor with Elijah Moore. And that to me is what you want. It's not going to be this alpha, sexy, amazing piece for fantasy, but he's going to be, in my opinion, very consistent. He's going to get a good 8+ targets a week in an offense that I think should be relatively good. Believe it or not, I can't believe the Jets offense is going to, I'm going to sit here and say the Jets offense is going to be good, but I think the Jets offense should be pretty good. And so I think that that's a valuable piece, and he's talented. He's a very good yard after catch guy with the ball in his hands. And so he can make a lot happen with, short targets.
I mean, there's no doubt he's explosive, and obviously a player that I'm really thrilled to see what he's able to do if he can play 16 games. And we've talked about a Jet player every single position so far. So if I'm going there in New York right now.
Jesus. I didn't even think of that. That's true.
All right, Coach Tibbs, over to you, my friend. Rashad Bateman. Obviously, no more Hollywood Brown. Lamar Jackson's hopefully healthy. I don't want to take your takes away, but
you just took all of them. Go ahead, take it away.
Tell me why Bateman, man.
Oh, like you already mentioned those two big things, but like Marquise Brown's departure is leaving a whopping like 140 targets. Like I don't think Mark Andrews is going to be a 200 target tight end catching 150 of them. So I think Bateman could be that primary receiver who could get close to 100, right behind Mark Andrews in the pecking order of the offense, but they don't have anyone else. We discussed this last week, but I'm more enthused that Lamar could be healthier again. You should have the running backs back in the offense, which theoretically could help Lamar be able to get better passing lanes on play action throws and whatnot. And then finally, just with Bateman, like the guy finished as a wide receiver 5 last year. Like I think he was like ranked like 69 in PPR. That's not going to happen again. I think Rashad Bateman might be better off for Lamar and his QB progression as years go on, being a more possession receiver instead of relying on those deep balls that we saw Marquise Brown come through. I wouldn't say constantly because he had some drops over the last couple of years, some head scratching drops, but I think those will improve his numbers, and I think it could have a more stabilized offense, just relying on just big plays every now and then.
The nice thing about Rashad Bateman that I love, and Marquise Brown leaving made it so much easier, is this offense is very predictable. They like one wide receiver, they like one tight end, and then they run the ball. So I think Rashad Bateman is going to step into that wide receiver 1 role and probably be the number 2 target, like you said, in that offense. And so when Hollywood was there, it made things a little bit more iffy because the passing volume is just not that high. But now with no other wide receiver there, I don't see Devin Duvernay or James Proche or any of these people cutting into Rashad Bateman's work. I think Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews are going to have as much as they could possibly handle. So this is a good pick too. I like this one.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the snap shares of last year, and like Bateman, like the first when he came back off injury and whatnot, he was playing around 40-60%. And then as he got, I guess, more acclimated to the offense, and obviously Lamar went down and they turned to Tyler Huntley and they needed more passing, you saw like an increase of his playing time. He was more of an 80% wide receiver. Marquise Brown was playing high 80s, 90%. So, and that was on a consistent basis throughout the year. So if Bateman could just step into like just being on the field more than he was last year, I think it's all going to benefit him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Steve, you're muted, man.
That's why. Rashad Bateman getting close to that 100 targets seems pretty obvious this coming season based on what went away last year. So he's in a good opportunity to take that next year step and be successful. All right, so my guy here is everyone's down on Amon-Ra St. Brown. You know, obviously the end of the season it was big hype, but now everyone's like, well, everyone's back now. You have Jared Goff at quarterback. They brought in 2 new wide receivers, but the one thing about Jared Goff, I mean, his yards per attempt, 6th fewest in the NFL last year. 6th fewest.
That's not good.
That's not great. That's not great, but it's good for St. Brown, though. St. Brown wasn't a guy who was, you know, going downfield, stretching the defenses. That's why they brought in Jameson Williams. That's why they brought in DJ Shark. Guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to control the underneath and middle of the field there. And with all the weapons coming back there, he might not be a guy who sees 10-plus targets every single week. But I think there's a logic where he could easily be the number 2 pass catcher, even the number 1 still. Everyone's so like, oh, TJ Hawkinson's back. Well, no one's talking up TJ Hawkinson like he's an elite tight end. They're not talking about like a Mark Andrews or a Travis Kelce. They're not talking about him like that. So this opportunity for St. Brown to be the number 1 pass catcher on this team. We know DeAndre Swift's going to get his, of course. He's looking better this offseason, supposedly. Jameson Williams could start the year on the pump this year, which would put him out the first 6 games of the season. DJ Shark, we only see him play 1 good season. And he's a guy who's supposed to be a field stretcher who isn't likely going to see the same target share with a guy like Jared Goff at quarterback. So you have to assume that St. Brown is going to still be in line for a good target share that gets him 6 to 8 targets almost per game. And the fact that so many people are so down on him, he's going as a value in Dynasty, and I'm pretty sure he's a value in redraft still. I think there's still a big opportunity for him to take another step. You have to assume early on last year, he's a rookie. He was a 4th-round pick. There's a reason he was a 4th-round pick. He needed more time to get involved in an NFL offense, to learn, to develop. And you saw him develop late in the season. Granted, you're missing some key players there, but I think St. Brown is definitely going to be underrated by a redraft season when it really starts kicking in. I think he's going to surprise people early on in the season.
Yeah, I think he carved himself out a nice role. I think the end of his season was a bit of a anomaly. I don't know if he'll ever reach those heights again where he was kind of a low end wide receiver 1. But he proved enough to the Lions and enough to the coaching staff that he needs to be involved in this offense in some facet. He just did. So I think this is a good pick. I think this is smart. It might not be kind of like Elijah Moore. It's not the sexiest, like most upside pick, but I think he's just too talented and too good, and the team knows that. And so, like you said, if Jameson Williams starts off on the pup, then forget it. Then Amon-Ra's gonna start the first 6 weeks being on fire.
Right. I can expect him to be closer, not exactly the same, but closer to what we saw at the end of the season than what we saw at the beginning of the year. So I think people are pushing back to what we saw early on in his NFL career. So.
And there's always going to be garbage time, guys. So don't worry, the Lions are still bad.
They are still. We'll see. I bet they surprise. They could be sneaky good. I don't know. We'll see. But that's for another debate there.
13th, Lions sneaky good.
Call me out when they
we hyped up the Jets. and we hyped up the Jets all show, and we said the Lions are sneaky good.
Yeah, I know. All right, so year 2 wide receivers who are doomed to fail. Coach John, you have Kadarius Toney. Why Kadarius Toney? There's a new look offense in New York.
Yeah, I know there's a new look offense in New York. Sadly, they still have Daniel Jones. So that's the biggest downfall there. But no, Kadarius Toney, look, there's already been talks of the Giants kind of wanting to explore trade options with him and trying to get rid of him. And you know, not to sit here, and I don't like reading into these off-field narratives, but he's just not gelling well with the Giants right now. And so I don't see a world where he's talented, but he's not like uber talented where like they need to feature him in this focal point. And so I think they're going to try and get the money going, which is Kenny G. I think they're going to try and get him going more and get that offense going that way. And as well as Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon Barkley coming back and Saquon Barkley being healthy is going to eat up a lot of those short yardage targets that Kadarius Toney, those slants, those jet sweeps, those screen game things that Kadarius Toney did well. And other than the one game that he had, there was nothing else really to write home about. So I think he's a mediocre player on a bad team with a mediocre quarterback. I just don't see a world where Kadarius Toney breaks out to this next level. And maybe I'm wrong. And that game against the Cowboys is more what he is. And he can take, 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that becomes like a thing for him. But I just don't think it is. I think he was playing against Trayvon Diggs, and Trayvon Diggs just loves giving up big touchdowns. So, that was kind of the point there.
No, that is true. That is true. Yeah, I'm torn on this one still. I don't know really what to expect from Toney still. Like, I don't know. I don't think he's going to break out, but I feel like he could contribute for this offense here just because the injuries could pile up once again. Again, we don't know. We can't always presume that injuries are going to happen, but there's some talent there. I just don't know if they're going to use it right, especially when they bring Rondell Robinson also into the fold. It's just it doesn't make sense what they're doing. If Toney could get traded somewhere else, I would have more faith in him, but I definitely don't have enough faith in him to call him a breakout. But I'm torn.
I have more faith something crazy will happen to it. Will be just some crazy headline throughout the offseason rather than having a breakout year.
Oh God. Hey, that's more than possible. But Coach Gibbs, we're on to you, my friend. You got Tutu Atwell, a former second-round pick.
Yeah, that's why.
Second-round picks could still produce, but you're saying there's really no shot for you?
I don't think there's much shot. Like, I've been seeing, like, I guess, articles and, like, I guess, mini camp hype up. Like, oh, Tutu Atwell's looking amazing. Matt Stafford says he's really impressing with, like, his movements and his route running. But, like, for me still, like, I was, like, totally captivated with Tutu Atwell during, like, draft season. Like, why did the Rams spend that 52th pick on Sean McVay's a genius? The Rams don't even care about draft picks. I thought all of that meant that like they had a plan for this guy, and the guy only was on the field for 10 meaningful stamps on offense last year. Just pretty much just a special teams guy. With all the injuries to the wide receiver core, they trade Woods. They don't resign Beckham. They get Robinson. They have Cooper Kupp, who's amazing. They still have Van Jefferson. I still don't think there's no room for him in that offense whatsoever. Like, maybe he could just become, like, I guess the Van Jefferson role of past years where he's that fourth receiver and he can make some like just red eye plays, throwing some deep shots. But other than that, I just don't see him being totally involved in the offense, and that's for redraft. Dynasty, you probably could just write him off. So
yeah, I mean, he'll probably play the Deshaun Jackson role where he gets one catch for like 70 yards, and then people will go nuts. But like, it's just what Deshaun Jackson did when he was with the Rams. Every once in a great blue moon, he got a big play, and it happened to be a score. And I think that's what you're got with Tutu Atwell at best right now in this part of his career. There's no room right now in that offense unless some major injuries happen for him to ever make a major improvement.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I totally forgot Deshaun Jackson played there last year, so that's the role I was describing. Thank you.
All right, so over to my last pick here for the wide receivers, guys. It's Rondell Moore, and I feel like Rondell Moore is starting to cool off for some people, but I just don't see Rondell Moore really taking that next step. Honestly, you would thought that at the end of last year, you would say, all right, because DeAndre Hopkins went down, Rondell Moore would see more playing time and more work, but he really just never did. He really never came out of the role that he was in. And again, he's 5'7", guys. He's shorter than me right now in the NFL playing. I just don't see him ever taking that development where he's the team's 1 or 2. And you bring in Hollywood Brown, you really trade your first round pick So go get another wide receiver when you just spent a second, or I think Rondell Moore went in the second. Can't remember correctly. On a wide receiver, why go out there and get Hollywood Brown if you're not going to go and give Rondell Moore all the opportunity possible to succeed? And I just don't see it happening. He might at some point early on in the season with Hopkins out maybe show some flash, but when Hopkins comes back, I mean, this is a playoff caliber team where they have 3 really good wide receivers that I just don't see them really using Rondell Moore as a actually true wide receiver. And then you bring in Darrell Williams now, who's a really good pass catching back. We thought maybe Rondell Moore would want to take that kind of position in the offense, but it just doesn't seem that they're setting up their offense to use Rondell Moore as a true breakout type of wide receiver or someone who's a major contributor in the offense. So I just don't see him taking that next step this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's just a little bit more of a gadgety type of player than he is a true fantasy stud.
Right. That's the best way to see it.
Yeah, I think his only shots like that first 6 games where Hopkins is out and he can make some magic. Other than that, you're just gonna probably just have him in those hurry up offense type of moments where they're just trying to get those quick out routes and get some yardage on complete the down. So I agree with you, Steve.
Yeah, like I said, you bring it back AJ Green, you bring in Hollywood, just they don't seem to trust him. So hands off that. So all right, let's finish this up with our tight ends. And John, you have Kyle Pitts. I didn't ask you. I don't know if maybe I didn't put the fail up there before, but I'm assuming you're having him exceed expectation. I'm assuming, right?
No, I'm having him regress out of expectations.
Okay,
I'm having him regress. I think succeed off of what was one of statistically the best tight end seasons we've seen out of a rookie is really hard to do. Look, I don't know what that offense is going to look like. I really don't. I think they could be in contention for the number 1 overall pick next year. I think the Falcons are that bad. So Kyle Pitts he's super talented and I love him. He's a great piece, but for redraft, going as a top 5, top 6 tight end to me just seems a little crazy. I don't see a world where he can be this again, unless the Falcons figure it out and become a pass happy offense with him and Drake London and they're chucking the ball over the yard, which I just don't think is going to happen. I just think this team's going to stink. I think they're going to be very limited. I think defensively, they're not going to be able to stop a nosebleed. And so it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for Kyle Pitts to even replicate what he did last year, which was, 1,000 yards. And now he can make up for his fantasy points by putting up more touchdowns because he struggled in the touchdown department. But I don't really see another 100 reception, 1,000-yard season in Kyle Pitts. I think that's just going to be. I think he's just going to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think he has a season where he tops what he did last year with the offense he's in.
Right, 100%. And that's really what this is. This is similar to the Mac Jones thing. I think and not that Kyle Pitts is limited like the Mac Jones argument, but I just think you saw the best you could out of Kyle Pitts last year. Given the situation, I don't think the Falcons got better. They added Drake London, but they're still 2-3 years away from being a legitimate threat. And so Kyle Pitts maybe in 2 years from now might be awesome. But for redraft formats and redraft standards, I just think the hype around Kyle Pitts is still, it's just name value. It's all it is right now. I just think I'd rather take my shot with other guys later or, if you're going to spend the high draft capital on, I don't know, someone else.
Kelsey Andrews.
Yeah, Andrews, Kelsey.
Mark Andrews for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
That's
who
it.
else is going that fifth. I'm trying to think of who's in that 5th round ADP.
Dalton Schultz, DJ Hawkinson,
George Kittle. I mean, I'd rather George Kittle over Kyle Pitts, in my opinion.
All right. Well, again, I'm
for
on
for redraft. For redraft.
Oh, for redraft. For dynasty.
For redraft. That's what I'm going. No. Dynasty. I still think Kyle Pitts is a top 3 guy because his ceiling will be immense when he hits it. I just don't see him hitting it. I just don't see him hitting it in 2022, this upcoming year.
All right, I respect it. Coach Gibbs, my friend, over to you. You went with the other elite tight end in this class here, and Pat Fitz. Pat Fryermuth.
Oh wow.
Pat Fryermuth, I'm sorry. I didn't ask you either. Is he going to exceed the expectations he saw last year, or is he going to drop down for you?
He's gonna fail. Like, it's not hard to fail when you're a tight end. You don't know where these touchdowns are gonna come from. He had 7 touchdowns last year with a veteran quarterback, and he's gonna have veterans this year. But Mitchell Trubisky, uh, especially I'm not gonna be going down with the rookie Kenny Pickett either. So that kind of scares me how things will work with those. But we all know like rookies. Best friend could be tight ends. I could help him out. But other than that, like you look at the offense last year, it was Deontay. It was Jesus Christ.
Najee. It was
Najee.
Deontay.
He was
Najee.
fourth in the pecking order, guys. Claypool, Deontay, Najee, then Pat Fryermuth. So like that optic right there is not really like good for me either, because you typically see like these top end tight ends are typically 1 or 2 in their targets target on the offense. So I don't think that's gonna work with them. And the Steelers still have a bad offensive line. There's too many question marks with me. And like he finished tight end 13 last year. I think it's going to be hard for him to crack into that top 8 mix that you kind of all like regard with tight ends. So no, fail.
Yeah, I mean he was a big touchdown or bust kind of guy last year. So I agree with you on this take here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, boys. So let me go over my final player, and it's John Bates from the Washington Commanders. I am going to be positive and
I was like, who the hell is that?
Indeed, I know, guys. I know. He's in half my dynasty teams. Check out the end of my benches. So John Bates, rookie last year. You know, someone later in the season started getting playing time because Logan Thomas went out, and then Ricky Seals went out. You know, kind of averaged about like 3 targets per game or so. But the kid has opportunity. He wasn't someone who was an elite talent coming out, but he did a little bit of decent work with a lot of his talent overall. And Logan Thomas could end up being on the pump. I think he tore his ACL like literally like 2 games before the season was over there. You know, there's no more Ricky Seals-Jones, of course. He's in New York. And the tight end position in Washington has always been featured over the last few seasons. That's when Logan Thomas came out of nowhere. I know we've seen some of these tight ends just pop up and produce for us in fantasy each and every week here. We know Carson Wentz loves to throw to his tight ends over his career. We'd love to see that. And, you know, Terry McLaurin could be holding out. We don't know how long that could be, if that's a thing. And really, outside of Terry McLaurin, who is the real number 2 in that offense in terms of a pass catcher? You could say Curtis Samuel. You could say Doxson. You could say McKissick. But we really don't know. You know what's been really always consistent? The tight end usually is a number 2 guy there. So John Bates has an opportunity to really take another step in his development and be someone where maybe he's not like obviously the tight end 5 or whatever, but finishes a top 12 tight end possible at the end there. It's potentially there, and I think that's why I like to see him be able to succeed this coming season.
I always like free square plays like this because John Bates is probably on your waiver wire. If he's not, you can trade a ham sandwich for him, and you never know. And if he does hit, like Logan Thomas did, and you're like, oh wow, this is a weekly streamable tight end, and this is great. I think it's a good call, John Bates. I have a friend, John Bates. Shout out to my friend whose name is also John Bates. So. It's when I first read that in the show doc, it made me laugh. I texted my buddy. I go, "Oh, we're talking about you in my fantasy football show." What?
I love it. Probably so confused.
Yeah. So.
We're gonna wrap this thing up tonight, guys. It was a fantastic show. Coach John, anything to say before we go?
I got nothing. Follow me at FTLS_JBats. Wish me luck. I got the VP of my company in with me for the next 3 days. So. Hopefully pray that I get a good couple days on the road with and my review goes well, and I keep my job and everybody's happy.
Oh, good luck, brother, as
Thank
always.
You. Appreciate you.
Coach Jibbs, my friend, what do you got to say?
I am hungry.
Yes,
hungry.
I know I've kept Jibbs on this way too long tonight. I apologize, brother. I'll make it up to you one day.
You're good.
For me, guys, I'm hungry too, to be honest, but as always, please go check out our website at www.thefantasycoaches.com. We got rankings. We have a whole statistical database that we're working on that's all kind of up there now. So I would hope you guys check it out. It's really really, really good. And obviously we have our articles, we have rankings, we have these podcast episodes up there. We have everything you hopefully need to help you win your fantasy championship. And as always, please go follow the podcast over on Twitter at Coaches Fantasy. Please also subscribe to us on YouTube at The Fantasy Coaches. We really appreciate it. Tune in until next time, guys. We'll be back next Wednesday talking about some last chance players. So until then, guys,